Perfect. All right. So thank you for joining me today. My name is Ashley Tabrin. I am a writing and study skills tutor here at the ILC. I am primarily online, but we offer online and in-person sessions. So hopefully you can join us at some point over the course of your semester. And today's session, we're going to be getting into effective reading strategies. So I think everyone can see my screen. Thank you so much for joining me today. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of our conversation, I want to get some feedback from you. I really hope that as much as you can, I would like for you to participate in the chat. You can also talk if you would like, but you guys giving me feedback, participating in the chat is really going to help this session be the best that it can be. So first, I want to know, on a scale from 1 to 5, where do you think you fall with how well you retain the information that you read? So in the chat, just let me know 1 through 5. Like 1, I really am not retaining much of what I'm reading. 5, I'm really great at retaining everything that I'm reading. And just so that you know, if you're not speaking, make sure you're muted so you don't pick up any background noise during the session. But on a scale from 1 to 5, how well do you retain the information? So Harper, ADHD could definitely affect retention of information. We have some 3s, a 2.5, a 3, very good, a 3 out of 5. So already you're kind of seeing that you're around the same place with some of the other people in our session, which should be encouraging. 4, but it takes ages for you to read. Well, Zoe, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Reading fast doesn't necessarily mean you're reading efficiently. But I'm glad that you guys are at different levels, but kind of the same at the same time. So do you have any strategies that you already are using when you're reading that you think are effective? I kind of want to see like what you know. So if some of the presentation today is things that you don't know, then it could be new strategies, or it could confirm some of the things that you do well. I see more people are joining. But just like, do you have any strategies when you're reading that you think are effective that you want to share before I go into the strategies that I have organized for you today? So if that's writing in the margins or underlining and using sticky tabs to go back and find information, those are really good tips, Harper, and those are some things I'm going to get into. Does someone have a question? If not, please make sure you're muted. But yes, that's something that we're going to get into. So thank you for that suggestion, Harper. Okay, so today's purpose. You've already received this when you signed up, but I thought it would be good for us to go over it. So we're going to break down and demystify like what it is, what it takes to actually read for college courses, and wherever you are on your college journey, you are going to be engaging in some extensive reading. So learning how to skim information, scan information, and comprehend academic texts can save you time and improve understanding. Some of the presentation and the strategies that I present, you might feel like are actually time consuming, but once you have them as a regular tool that you consistently use, it'll actually save you time in the long run. You know, we only have 24 hours a day. So it's important that when you're reading for your courses, you're reading strategically to ensure that you're maximizing your time and your learning. So those are 2 things that are valuable that we want to maximize. So we're going to focus on these strategies to help you better comprehend the text that you read. So we kind of already talked about this, but welcome and purpose we've already done. I'm going to give you a little survey just to figure out, you know, what are your feelings around reading in your college courses? And then we'll talk about some strategies that you can do before, during, and after a reading session. So you can, in the chat, again, just kind of number the questions and your responses. So you can put number 1, yes, no, etc. So I can kind of, again, gauge, where my audience is with their current reading practices. So the first question is, do you feel like you spend too much time reading for your courses? So I see Ashley, beautiful name, says yes to all 3. The second question is, do you feel overwhelmed about the amount of content in your textbook? Like, is it too much for you to have to process? And I see yes for all as well. And then number 3, when you read, do you have a hard time focusing on what's important? And focus in general would be a problem, but then definitely focusing on reading is something that takes practice. So I'm seeing yes, yes, yes to all these questions. And because of that, I think it's kind of safe for us to say we're all in the right place and it's something we want to learn and improve. I'm seeing a resounding yes. So again, these strategies are not one size fits all. So some of the things that we talk about today, may really resonate with you and you want to do them. And then some of them okay, that's not for me. So it's more about tailoring and finding an individual system that you feel really good with when you're approaching your texts. So the first thing I want to talk about is, whether or not you should actually complete the reading, which sounds counterintuitive, but even if you wanted to read every single thing your instructor assigned you, it's not always going to be possible. You are working, you have a family, you're taking care of yourself, you have other responsibilities. So sometimes you're not solely a college student, so you have to juggle other things that may come up and try to kind of take your attention. So first, you need to kind of figure out how much time you should devote. I have a little formula a little bit later, but there's a way for you to prioritize or figure out, well, is this something I should actually be reading? And the first thing is consulting the syllabus. So often your professor will go ahead and tell you what's important on the syllabus. So I found the sample syllabus online and immediately the basic course information, course objectives, and then the next thing is text reading. So by your syllabus how important you should prioritize the readings. So if you look at this particular syllabus, both of there are 2 texts that are required, and the instructor already tells the students the first 6 weeks of class, it's really important that you have the first text. So you already know which one to prioritize because she's telling you. And then in fact, our second day of class is the first chapter. So you have to get the book immediately. So automatically you can kind of tell that what this class is focused on, you really, really have to read. And then it tells you the back half of the class, the 7th through the 9th weeks, is when they focus on another book. So your syllabus will often kind of give you a hint of what to prioritize. Also, comparing the lectures to the reading. So from my experience in college, we had Blackboard, but it wasn't the primary focus that you guys use and rely on it now. But your professors are often sharing with you lecture notes. Now, do I know anything about rotational spectroscopy? See, I can't even say it. Do I know anything about rotational spectroscopy? No. But if you were taking a class on rotational spectroscopy, you would look at the examples of the lecture and then compare, what is my professor prioritizing in the lecture versus what's prioritized in the reading. You can kind of compare. Harper, I don't think you would have a syllabus right now, but I'm saying when you get your new schedules and you get your syllabus from your courses, the first thing I would do is to look at the required reading and look at the schedule and kind of see, how much reading am I going to have to do for the course? Is this a course where I'm assigned a chapter a week? Is this a course where I'm assigned 3 chapters a week? And then that can kind of help you plan on, how you're going to tackle the reading in your course. So I was just saying, I use the sample syllabus, but when you get your syllabus, one of the first things you need to do is to look at the required readings. And then you can also look at the notes that your professor provides, which is the second thing, the lectures. And okay, so what are these notes? How do they compare to my textbook? And then that can kind of help you gauge, what you should actually read. And then listen to what your professor is saying. Often your professor will tell you what to prioritize in their lecture. So if there are important key terms and phrases that your professor consistently brings up during class, then you would want to go back and support your understanding of those terms through reading of your textbook. So, I don't know about that. So Harper got an email talking about textbook and the website said you didn't need it. If your teacher says you need it, I'm going to go back to the point on the slide, listen to your professor. Because some professors will teach the same course, and one professor will rely heavily on the textbook and one professor won't. So it's really, really important, even if you're taking the same course as a friend who has a different professor, they might have a different reading workload than you. So it's really, really important to listen to your instructor and consult their syllabus so that you know how to prioritize the reading for that course. I see a couple of people in the chat. But yeah, that's what I would do. They said you need it, I think you need the book. But you can also do some things like renting the book. I know the Wake Tech Library usually has all of the required textbooks in stock, so you could check out the book. I don't think you're allowed to leave the library with it, but I don't work in the library, so I can't say for sure. But I do think that you can also use the library as a tool to get some of your reading done. So yeah, Ashley says she made the mistake of buying a book because we didn't need, because she bought it prior to the class starting. So as soon as you get the syllabus and hear from your instructor, let them know, because some instructors will give you a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of stuff online that you won't actually have to consult the textbook. But again, it's dependent upon the professor. So syllabus and listening to your professor, reaching out to your professor, asking questions like how much is the required reading a part of this class, or do I need the textbook? And depending on your professor or the subject you get, answers. Yeah, you get the syllabus the first few days of class. It should be one of the first things you consult. If you want to, I'm going to reiterate it at the end, but we at the ILC can help you with all sorts of things. So you can schedule a session where we just navigate your Blackboard and help you get your bearings about, okay, well, this is where my syllabus is located. This is where my course resources are located. This is what I need to study. This is what I need to have. So if you're interested in doing something like that, let me know. So now that you've kind of looked at your syllabus and determined okay, I have to read this book, I have to read these many chapters over the course of the 16 weeks or 18 weeks, we're going to start talking about, so what are some before reading strategies? You know that you definitely have to read this assignment. So what should you do before you start reading? For the practice, if you want to look, I'm going to give you a couple of online textbooks throughout the session that we'll reference sometimes. If you want to look at these texts later to practice some of the skills in a low stakes setting, you can definitely do that. But the first thing is here. It's a textbook on interpersonal communication. So when you look at a text, and the reason I'm using digital textbooks for this session is just that I don't have you in front of me. We're not together and we can't look at a textbook together. So I thought the digital textbook would be a good use of our time, but we can talk later about the benefits of digital or physical text with the strategies that we have. But so how you start your reading session is critical, and it could definitely shape the rest of your experience. So the first thing you need to do is multiply the number of pages you need to read by 5 minutes. So if you had a 10-page reading assignment, then you would need to designate around 50 minutes to read. Even if you have more than 10 pages to read, I suggest stopping your reading sessions around 50 minutes and taking a break. You can always go back to your reading session afterwards, but I do think, the 50-minute mark is kind of when you start to lose your attention. So if you notice, a lot of our sessions today were right around 50 minutes because we want you to be as focused and attentive as possible. So multiply the number of pages you need to read by 5 minutes. And then from there, think about how much time you have to complete the reading and kind of plan your sessions accordingly. Once you say, okay, I have to read 10 pages, I want you to divide that reading into digestible chunks and look for natural breaks. So how will you find those natural breaks? You're going to find those natural breaks by looking at the headings and subtitles and key takeaways and different things that are highlighted or in different colors, and looking at where there's bullet points and all sorts of things that kind of signal to you that a new section is occurring. And so, when you get to the end of a section, take a break. We're going to talk about some strategies that you can use within, but plan out your session. Don't just think you can have a 3-hour sit down and read 3 chapters and think you're going to retain everything. You have to be a little more selective in your experience. Also, reading a textbook really isn't just effective if you're just reading it without being an active reader. So 2 things that I have some resources about today are annotation and sticky notes. And we know a lot about annotation because I feel like we've done it so much, but I'm going to briefly show you how to annotate a digital text, and then I'm going to show you a physical text feature with using sticky notes. These are YouTube videos, so there may be an ad or 2 that I'm going to try to mute, but I want to show you these 2 quick strategies that help you start your reading session. So annotating, at first
it's everything you.
Of course, there's an ad. I can't see if I can skip it. Okay, there, I can skip it. Okay. So this is what I wanted, how do I annotate?
System of symbols or color coding that works for you. For example, I like to highlight unknown words in one color and the main idea in another color, and things that are interesting to me in another color. Other ideas include circling important words like key vocabulary, underlining main idea or key idea, drawing arrows to connect related items, numbering steps in a process or items in a list, and again, using symbols like question marks, exclamation points, asterisks, or make up your own to identify important areas or things that you want to refer back to later. Here's an example of an annotated text, and because everybody is online learning this semester, we've done digital annotations as the example.
So of course you can see her margin comments, you can see the purpose of the reading. You can also see things she highlighted with questions. She highlighted questions and like things that she supported. So again, it's going to help you retain the information, number 1, but it's also going to just help you stay focused, stay active. So annotating is a key tool for that. Also, the sticky notes one is a physical example. Sticky notes are really helpful if you, like Ashley said, bought a book that you want to take back. Using sticky notes is going to be really helpful because you don't have to, you can take them out at the end, your book's still good as new, and you can sell it back to the bookstore. So sticky notes, we're going to talk about how to use those effectively.
So when it comes to effective textbook reading, most of the tips are highlight section at a time. When you come across
I went too far.
Next, you flip through the chapter
again.
And let's jump in.
Okay.
So first you decide on a color-coded scheme. For this demonstration, I am using pink for bold words, green for any thoughts or questions that come up as you're reading, yellow for any key points, purple for notes on images or graphs, and orange for your own summary bullet points. Next, you flip through the chapter before reading and place in the sticky notes you know you'll need as you read. So pinks in where there are bold words, oranges at the end of each main section, so you have those there when you need to write in those bullet point summaries. Feel free to cut the sticky notes to size as needed or stack multiple if there are several key concepts in a single paragraph. Step 3, start at the beginning and read one section at a time. When you come across the bold words, you write in the definitions on those pink Post-its. You will also add in any green Post-its for thoughts and questions that come up, yellow Post-its for any key points you want to make sure to remember, and any purple Post-its for any images you want to highlight. As you go, be sure to mark the page number and, if needed, the paragraph number for each sticky note, and maybe even number them in order if there are many on a page. This is essential for step 4. But before we get there, if you've gotten any value out of this video, study for the exam, flip back through the chapter one more time to ensure the stickies you've created do represent all key points and concepts. Once you're satisfied with your notes, transfer the stickies to your notebook. You might put them beside relevant lecture notes, or you might just organize them by chapter on a new page, or even on your wall or the window. The main point here is to be able to visualize the material in a way that your brain can make sense of. You might group things by color, by topic, or even by things I know and things I know I need to study. And of course, if you decide you need to go back to the textbook and review more fully on a keyword, you have the information on each sticky to be able to find it without any issue. Now, a bonus perk when it comes to the flexibility of sticky notes is that you can transfer them back and forth as much as you need to. Maybe after you study for your exam, you put them back in place within the chapter, and then you have them ready to go when you need to come back and review for that final exam.
So both of the strategies that we talked about, I think, are interesting because they can help you be active. The key to effective reading is being active. If you are sitting there passively reading, not stopping, not paying attention to the text structure and those things, it's going to make it more difficult for you to comprehend. Thank you, Ashley. I'm going to put all the resources, including this presentation, in the chat for you, so you will have it to reference. The last thing I want to talk about is highlighting, and you have to really be cautious when you are highlighting. Make it selective. So you shouldn't just, and this again is something you do before you're reading, so you can pay attention to those highlighted words when you come across it. So highlight at the end of a section, kind of make sure you keep yourself to one sentence or a phrase per paragraph. You know, there's nothing worse than like telling a student to highlight and you get it back and it's like an entire page that's highlighted. Everything is not important. So be selective. Keywords and key phrases are better to highlight than whole sentences. And then again, with the sticky note example, you saw the color coding. You can also do that with highlights. Color coding is going to help you with these like really good visual cues that you can easily refer back to. So if you're reading and you highlighted all of the times where you saw something about theme, then bam, you can go back and look at all, just look for the green words and you're like, all the green was theme. So all of these phrases and words kind of come back to the theme. You're going to pair those with summaries. So writing as well. And then I don't know if everybody, and a couple of people in my previous session were telling me about other examples, but I like to, if I'm reading something on my phone, you can always save it, like go to markup and you can save it as a PDF. So you can take a website, save it as a PDF, and then use the markup features like the highlighter and the pencil and the text on your phone to create your own annotation on your phone. You can upload that as a file, and then you have another way to study. So there are benefits of having physical things to annotate, as well as the benefits of having digital annotation. And the reason I've spent some time talking about digital access to text is just because you can then take those with you. They're very portable. So you are, before you're reading a text, preview. I wrote preview 3 times because I want you to know how essential and important it is to preview. You're going to look for the titles, the headings, and the subtitles. You're going to look at illustrations, graphics, charts, and visuals, vocabulary lists, glossaries, end of chapter summaries, introductions, review questions, and practice problems, special interest boxes and notes and margins, and bold words. So if we were looking, okay, I always get nervous when it takes a while to transition, but let me see. I'm trying to get back to, there we go. So this is the chapter on Introduction to Human Communication. So I would be looking at this picture and maybe trying to figure out, I wonder what's going on in this picture. They seem happy in the one picture, angry in the other picture, and they seem like supportive of each other in the third. So I would look and see that. Why I study communication. Okay, these are the things I'm going to be learning. So I might think about, okay, what does needs have to do with communication? So I would think about those things, looking at the bullet points, again, paying attention to bold words, key takeaways. I would go ahead and read these first before I read the chapter. You might even want to go ahead and do some of these exercises, and learning objectives again are everywhere. And then we see the word communication, and a benefit of a digital text is that there's things that you can click on hyperlinked as well. Again, I'd be like, oh, maybe social media is going to come up. It's going to talk about emojis of communication, which are actually really fascinating. I think people dismiss emojis, but they have importance. And so, yeah, this is kind of how I'll navigate. I'm going to skip to the bottom of the chapter just because towards the end, there are exercises for you to do. There are key takeaways like we've seen before. These terms, I would go ahead and write them out on my sticky notes, maybe place them as I see them. And then there are chapter activities, and there's an assessment. These are all things I would pay attention to, so I know I'm going to be looking for these as I read. And we kind of started talking about it a little bit, but there are benefits for digital textbooks. And some of it isn't just that it's time, that it can save you money. Digital textbooks have a lot of cool features like pathways that can save your progress. I have a tablet. I also have a Kindle. Even if you don't have a Kindle, Kindle has an Android and Apple app that you can use. So you highlight stuff in your Kindle. I think something that I really enjoy about reading a text on a Kindle is it'll tell you like 3,453 other people highlighted this. So it's also like, okay, this is important. So it's almost like a group project with annotating. You have hyperlinks like we just saw that can take you to further information. And it just sometimes has cool things that you can navigate and get back to. I don't know how many of you have opportunities to access your text digitally for the course, but it could be, I know you can rent text from Amazon digitally, and there are a lot of cool features that can help you be active in reading as well. But you do want to make sure that you are balancing your screen time. But just wanted to bring that up. So additional things that you should do before you're reading is begin with the end in mind. So go and read the summary first, read those chapter questions, read the practice problems to gain important ideas and aspects of your understanding. What do you already know? Because when we were reading the communication thing, like, oh, okay, well, I already know that emojis can kind of help people tell more or get a better picture of their feelings, because sometimes when you're reading a text message, you don't know how the person is feeling. So if they put a laughing emoji, it's like, oh, okay, they weren't being serious. So what did I already know about online communication? What is your purpose? Are you studying for a test? Are you learning new content? And the last thing is get out your crystal ball. I'm a big reality TV watcher, and a lot of the times the trailers for upcoming episodes will tell you lots of information. So I'll watch a trailer multiple times and be like, oh, she had on this outfit when this contestant did that. So this must mean that this person is getting eliminated. Well, do the same thing when you're reading. like, okay, well, this chapter brings up this point and that point, especially a history text. I think it would be really fun to do. Like, okay, this happens, this happens, this happens. So I'm going to predict that this chapter is mostly about, you know, the effects of the Vietnam War on American nationalism. I don't know. I don't teach history, but get out your crystal ball, make some predictions when you're reading the text. Anything that's going to help you stay actively engaged in a subject. So is there something that you think you learned from this section that you didn't already know? Is there something that you like want to incorporate in your before reading that you haven't before? Just wanted to give you a second to process any of the before reading strategies. If you had any input about them before we go to the during reading strategies. If there are any resources that you wanted, let me know and I can try to put those. I'm going to put everything in the chat at the end, but to make sure I don't leave anything out. See a couple of people typing, so I'm going to hold off just a moment. But again, these are all things you do before reading, and you don't have to do everything, but previewing the chapter, going ahead and highlighting, and all those things is going to put you a little bit ahead. And one person in my previous session also recommended that you read a chapter before class versus reading it after. Reading it so when you get to the lecture, you've already had some exposure to it. Oh yeah, so Layla said she didn't realize how effective it could be to read the summaries and questions first. I definitely do. That was a game changer for me. I also, when I'm tailoring information to my students, I'll give them a pretest before they even have the information, before they've even looked at the material, just to see what they know and to get them comfortable with the type of format that I'm going to assess them at the end. But I think it really helps you. I guess it just turns on a different layer of your brain or section of your brain, and it really helps you get invested and become active versus like a passive reader. Oh, awesome. I think actually the most fun you can have with it, the better. I'm telling on myself a lot because I spend a lot of time on the internet and on my phone, but TikTok, so many effective study strategies and digital note taking and all kinds of things I've learned from students, not even instructors, but just people have stuff that works for them. And that's also a pretty big YouTube community for studying as well. There are people who are in all, like from a doctoral program to an intro college level course that are giving tips on how to study and how to read effectively that are just fascinating. So if you ever want to go down that rabbit hole, I think, this is like an introductory course, but there are lots of fascinating things that people are doing and making it fun, making it aesthetic, if that's what helps you, anything that's going to help you retain information. I was talking earlier to my other session, but I've recently watched this documentary on Netflix, Quarterback, where it follows the three quarterbacks from the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. And I'm not a big football fan. Like, I watch it when I'm around other people, but I wouldn't say I like turn on ESPN every day. But I gained a lot of respect for what they do. And a big part of them being effective on the field is their study skills and the things that they read and practiced. They took so many notes on the sessions, the games that they watched. They would watch their opponents' games and take notes. They would watch their games and take notes and rewrite the notes and, do all sorts of things to really be as dominant on the field as they could. And I was really impressed and motivated, like seeing people at that level, no matter where you are, like still having to learn some of the things that we're talking about, some of the things that you like, not just in this session, but in other sessions as well. So if you didn't watch Quarterback, I think it's a great like thing you can watch while you're doing other things. But there's some study skills things that I learned from those players as well. It was really good. How do you weed out helpful versus bad tactics? I think, Harper, one thing that if I see it more than once, I'm like, okay, that's something that I should pay attention to. I often will pair it with other things. So like our college offers a lot of resources. There are a lot of things. There's Purdue OWL online writing lab. They have tons of resources. So if I see something on a TikTok or social media, I will look for confirmation from like a more reputable, like a Princeton or a Harvard or, Rate Tech resources. So it's about pairing like, like high, low, like, okay, this is from TikTok, but this university also says the same thing. And again, it's more like just figuring out what works best for you. So if somebody says something and you're like, that doesn't make any sense, or that's not going to be practical for me, then I just take what advice I think is good for me. And then if I don't like it, maybe it'll help someone else. But I do think there's a lot of people out there, whatever niche you have, whatever skill you're looking for, I think social media really is a good place to look for some stuff, which I know is kind of counterintuitive to what you hear from academics. But there are a lot of professors and students who are on social media, and it's a great way to communicate, and it's also a great way to learn study tips. So during reading strategies, I think these are some things you should be doing while you are reading a text. And for this example, I tried to find another, and again, I was an English major, and I do writing and study skills, so I'm not very good with the science and the math and the health, but I thought that, reading different textbooks would be cool. So this is a textbook for if you were trying to establish a career in healthcare. And remember, we talked about navigation, like right here, it already tells you, if you click on this link, it'll take you to key takeaways, it'll take you to vocabulary and a way to test yourself. So that's another point for digital textbooks. And I'm going to leave this in here. So if you want to spend some time looking at any of these in regards to our strategy, just let me know. Okay, so during reading, you need to hunt for the main idea. And often the main idea is going to be in the same place. It's going to be either at the beginning of the paragraph or at the end of the paragraph. And you will also get other hints through the headings and the subtitles, but constantly be thinking, okay, well, what am I supposed to take away from this paragraph? What am I supposed to take away from this page? Use questions to find answers. So with that, I mean, take the headings and turn them into a question. And then as you read, try to find the answer to those questions. And strategic note-taking is also really important. I know that you maybe attended a session today on note-taking. If you did, great. But if I were looking, I wanted to go back, sorry. If I were looking at, it's such a long pause between when my screen changes. But if I were looking at this, I would change, actually this is cool because it already gives you a question, why are ethics important in healthcare? So you can be reading and go ahead and try and answer that question. But then I would also like go down to another heading, ethics and morality. So I would change that to like, what do ethics and morality have to do with establishing a career in healthcare? So again, pairing those things and seeing, turning the headings into questions is really helpful. And then strategic note-taking also is something that you should try to do. One of the things that we put at the beginning of the session was talking about skimming and why you should skim a chapter. Now, I want to be clear, skimming is only the appropriate effective reading strategy in certain contexts. You should not rely on skimming for an entire course to be able to retain the content. You're just not going to retain the content. But there are certain times when you do need to skim. So when you do need to skim is when you are trying to get the big picture. So if you want to know, like, okay, what is this mostly about? Skimming could be a good effective tool. You also might want to skim when you're in a time crunch. So if you don't have a lot of time to finish an assignment, or you don't have a lot of time to finish a reading, then skimming might be an effective tool. And skimming is also really good if you are rereading a text. When you've already read it and you just want to go through, make sure you know what's going on. So a good thing to do to skim is to look at the beginnings, the endings, like we talked about. So starting with those, looking for which section of the text are longer, which section of the text are shorter to kind of prioritize. And you need to look for the cues like signal words, bolded words, phrases like however, although, in addition to, so you can kind of shift and kind of really try to analyze what is the author suggesting or saying in this section. But again, skimming is something that takes practice. It's not just opening a book and flipping through it and like, oh, I read the chapter. It's strategic. It does take less time than thoroughly reading and doing the annotation and the highlighting and the sticky notes that we talked about before, but it can be effective if used in the appropriate context. Skimming is a good idea. Other things that you can do while reading is question while reading. I know we talked about turning the headlines into questions, but also writing questions as you read, going back to those questions at the end of the reading and seeing if you can answer them. And if you can answer them, great. If you can't answer them after reading and going back in the text, then you know you might need to bring those questions to your professor. So for the second bullet, I was trying to think like stop hammer time. I'm gonna put stop summarize. I was like, maybe they won't get it. I don't know. I didn't really make that one work, but I think you should strategically stop at the end of sections and summarize what, I thought it was summarize what you read. And then when you look at all of the summaries, you kind of have a mini chapter that you created for yourself, and then you understand it because you wrote it. So stopping and summarizing periodically. I am someone who can go to sleep, pretty easily when I'm not supposed to be going to sleep. So if you are someone who needs to study and like retain your information when you're reading, you can kind of tell when you're starting to get out of it a little bit. So that might be a time for you to stop and summarize. But you can gauge when you think it's a good time by looking at how the text is structured and then understanding yourself and your attention span. I think a couple of you guys talked about time management in another session. I don't know if you guys attended the time management session, but one of the things that I think we don't talk about when we talk about effective reading is breaking it up into chunks. Earlier, I said, 50-minute sessions are pretty good for your attention span. It's also a method that I found that I use as an instructor, I use as a person completing tasks, including readings, because, as an English teacher, I have to reread. Even if I've read Frankenstein 15 times, I'm going to have to read it again before I present it to my students. So I like to use the Pomodoro method. The Pomodoro method is really fun, easy, and it incorporates breaks, which we think that breaks are counterintuitive to our learning, but they really, really aren't. So I'm going to show you a quick video. You might have also heard of the tomato timer. It's the same concept, but this has transformed how I practice and I like that it referred to it as a game. I look for ways to gamify all my adult tasks. So like I have a chore app that'll you can check off I did the dishes, put the laundry in. Just having a checklist. I love a list. I love a task list. I love the ding, that reward that you get from completing a task. So I think the Pomodoro method kind of gets into that as well. Like, read 5 pages, read 5 more pages. So breaking it down into digestible chunks really, really is helpful for me. So I hope that's something that you would, or if you're interested in, that you look into a little bit more. And staying connected when you're reading, like I keep talking about Frankenstein because I'm currently rereading that. I'm like, oh, this has happened. Oh, this brings up this point. Or when Frankenstein, the scientist, not the monster, he's different, or creature, like they have synonymous feelings, like, oh, he's also feeling this way. So I like making connections. I don't know if you've seen, it's the little guy from Horrible Bosses, that movie, but he has like this picture behind him with all these like red pieces of yarn between the connections, and he's like standing there with his hand over it. You have to like almost be like that, make as many connections as you can. Anything that's going to keep you invested and engaged in your reading. So was there anything? Yeah, I have to gamify adulting, because if not, and so like some things are just a little monotonous. So anytime, and reading can be monotonous, and I say that as an English major. So anything you can do to gamify to make it more interesting, I say go for it. And the Pomodoro technique not only gamifies, but also gives you permission to take breaks, because sometimes we feel like we don't have time to take breaks. We have a big chapter to read, or we have a big assignment to do, but like breaks help you focus. And like learning that was a big game changer for me. So if anyone has any strategies that they learned from the during reading session, like, yeah, I'm going to try that, or anything that you think is helpful that we just covered, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. And also just to let you know, at 5 p.m., there is a session on collaboration and communication, which should be interesting. I'm going to try to catch that one as well. But during reading, the more active you are, the better you'll be. And again, all these techniques aren't for everyone, but as long as you find one or two that really work for you, I think it can improve your reading for the semester. So you're done reading. We did it. We finished the chapter. Ashley said she learned how to preview and to pay attention to boxes more and what they're, instead of diving right into the reading. Yes, I love to read, and I like to read a lot of novels. And so you kind of have to put on a different hat when you're reading a novel versus when you're reading a textbook, because you can start anywhere in a textbook. You don't have to start at the beginning. And so just like getting that out of your mind, like I have to start at the beginning, and looking through and previewing really, really helps. Sometimes I do skip to the end of a book if I'm really worried about a character. I'm like, oh, I need to know that they make it. But when you're reading a textbook, you can read from wherever you are, and you don't necessarily have to go from start to finish. So that's a different shift. Taking breaks during reading so you don't zone out and miss information is so key, Layla. And when you start to feel like you're getting unfocused, your attention is waning, like your body can be telling you when to take a break. Because when you get to that point that you need a break, anything that you're trying to retain is not going to stick without taking care of yourself. So this last section is what you should do after. And I found the textbook about medical terminology for healthcare professions. And as a person who is aging, and I think I need to stop and plug in my laptop because apparently I'm doing a lot of work and it's dying. But apparently when you get a little older, you know, things don't work like they used to. So I was like, I guess, I don't know what this says about me, but I thought reading about the digestive system would be interesting. So this last textbook that I have for you to practice any of the skills is from the digestive system, which we all have. So I think it should be useful regardless of if you actually are studying any of the healthcare professions. So my after reading strategies are just, the first thing is to run it back, revisit the chapter. You will not retain everything that you need to retain from reading something one time. Like I said before, I'm an English instructor. I teach the same books. I've been teaching for 13 years, going on 14 years. I still reread the same text. Think about it, if you're teaching 4 classes and you're reading the same text and then multiply that by 13. That's how long I've read some of these books. And I still learn new things when I reread the chapter. I still find something to resonate a little differently. So you're going to have to revisit chapters multiple times. Actively get organized, and one way to do that is with concept maps. I don't know if anybody else is really a Canva girly or boy or a Canva person. I'm a Canva girly. I love Canva, and they have really good concept maps that you can take and apply your own learning. So everybody's probably seen this iceberg, right? Like what's on the surface, what's beneath. So that can help you explain so many different strategies. You can do the mind map. I like to use whichever one. There's so many different ones. And again, once you process, then you then have a study tool that you can read and review. So if you're interested in making mind maps, Canva is that girl. Canva is, I recommend Canva to anybody. You'll just look like a professional designer, even if you have no experience. But taking something that you've read and like explaining a life cycle or the digestive system cycle, like what happens to food from the moment you eat it until, you know, the rest of the process, explaining it using a concept map can be really helpful. Finally, flashcards are your friends. Even if you don't actively review the flashcards, which, you know, I'll make them if you don't do that, writing them down, typing it out is giving yourself another opportunity to access the information. You can do physical flashcards. I know they're like 50 cents at Target if you get the plain white ones. I like the color coding ones, but you can also use Quizlet, and then Quizlet gamifies a lot of stuff. Oh, you'll love Canva. Quizlet gamifies a lot of stuff, and there's strategies and stuff that you can play. So I like Quizlet. There's also a game that might be a little, if you like video games, there's also a website called Gimkit, and it gamifies stuff where you earn points to review material, and then through those points you can play, like, you know, games like Tetris and things like that. So if you want to gamify learning and make something like that help, it's called Gimkit. Yeah, it's something that I think is better when you are with a whole group playing it. Like we played a game, like it's kind of like Among Us, where you have to guess who's an imposter, but you can also do like single assignments on Gimkit by yourself and like play and have points. But anything that's going to make you actively review the information is something that you should look into. So I think none of these things were like necessarily new, but hopefully you think, okay, well, how can I incorporate one of these things in my studying and my reading? So if there's anything, I guess I'm going to skip to the next one, and then we can talk about at the end anything that you felt was important. But if I had to summarize effective reading in one slide, I would say review the chapter, survey the chapter, look at those titles and subheadings, question everything, you know, turn the headings into questions, write questions as you read each section with a purpose, and read by section. So like stop, take breaks, do something to help you recall the information, whether that's flashcards, concept mapped, a quiz, and then review and repeat. So find out whatever tools work well for you and use those tools successfully. And yeah, so if there's anything that you wanted to share that was really helpful for you, let me know in the chat. That'll help me tailor this presentation in the future. And yeah, I just thank you for joining. And again, you know, it's easy to start how you finish, or start how you want to finish is what I want to say. So, you know, the course is going to get long. The semester and the readings are going to get more intense as you progress. So taking the time to have these strategies as foundational at the beginning of a course is going to really help you when you get to the difficult concepts. So even if something is initially not difficult for you, I would still do some of these practices. All of this was helpful. Oh, thank you guys. I appreciate it. If there's a class, okay, Layla said, if there's a class lecture with the reading supplement, which one should you take notes on? Or should you take notes during both? I would take notes during both at first. And then like based on whatever assessment you have on the course, like I would kind of see like, oh, well, most of these questions came from the reading, or most of these questions came from the lecture, and then kind of base and plan my reading from that point. But I think that's a really good question, Layla. It really would depend on the lecture, the professor, and like what you're being asked to do afterwards. Start hard and finish excellent. This has all been very helpful. Having a bunch to read is so stressful. It's just like, you know, I'm looking at my laundry from across the room. Like there's so much laundry that I put off that it's overwhelming, but like one load at a time. So one chapter, one section at a time is all you can do. And then little by little, it'll get done and your reading will be like that. You just have to give yourself the time to do that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. There, you can schedule appointments with us at the ILC if you'd like. We can go over some of these with text that you will actually read. But I appreciate you and look forward to working with you during the semester. And if you have the opportunity, there's a session in 5 minutes that is the link's been put in the chat that you want if you want to attend and learn some more. Then feel free to do that. Thank you for joining me today. You have a great weekend too. I appreciate all of you.